Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by the Canadian Professional Sales Association and Nancy Dewar, CPSA course facilitator and sales coach and owner of Inspiring You. Today's webinar is called Using Questioning and Listening Skills to Uncover Your Customers' Real Needs. Today, Nancy will be covering the top questioning techniques and how to use these effectively to develop your top 10, understand what level 1, 2, and 3 levels of listening and how to become an expert at each one, understand why these skills can help you be more effective as a salesperson or sales leader, and learn how to stay present during sales calls and block out other competing thoughts. Today's host is Nancy Dewar. She is a certified executive leadership coach with over 25 years of delivering developmental programs and leading and managing teams of people. With a background holding senior positions in sales, marketing, and operations, Nancy brings a strategic approach to every business situation. Nancy has led several corporate coaching and learning initiatives and specializes in sales, culture transformation, change management, coaching, and mindfulness, and has industry expertise to include automotive, consumer packaged goods, retail, marketing agency, and pharmaceutical. Please note that all of today's attendees have been placed on mute for the duration of the webinar and that you may ask questions at the end using the question function in your GoToWebinar dashboard. Now, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Nancy to start.
Thanks so much. We're so excited to be with all of you today and talking about this very important topic. Happy Monday. Hopefully everyone had a wonderful weekend and is enjoying the great weather we're having, no matter where you are coming from. And so just wanted to really start with, and we plan to start talk about some of the outcomes today. We're going to talk about some questioning techniques and how to really uncover those needs of our clients. And what is it that we really are trying to really understand so that we can best support them and be the best partners with them as we have the journey of really supporting them through that sales process. So we're going to talk about some top questions, some top questioning techniques, and we're going to talk about how do we stay present. And so let's just get going. So the first thing here is just understanding your customers' real needs. And the first thing I'm going to say, just like all of us, we are all very complex. Our customers are also very complex. There's a lot of different things that we're all dealing with, especially as we're coming through this pandemic and learning to get back to maybe some in-person meetings versus virtual, or having a shift in our business. Maybe our business didn't do as well through the pandemic, or maybe it did extremely well. And there's a lot of things that we're all dealing with, both personally and professionally. And so let's just remember that just like you have things happening in your life, customers do as well. And so we have to really think about, how do we go into all of those meetings with the preface of really trying to understand where they're at. And so we, just recognizing they might be, really having a great day, a bad day. There might just be things going on. And so for us to come in with that lens of understanding where they're at this moment can be very helpful to build that relationship further, really understand what's happening in their business today. And as things shift, really being that ear for them to talk through and let them know, really understanding what's going on in your business is really what I want to spend some time on, as well as, what's motivating you and what are the needs of the business that you are responsible for. So sort of getting through all of these different layers reminds me of this image where we know that at the top we see certain behaviors and skills and knowledge and things that people are willing to share with us. But really what's harder to see is underneath. What's really happening? What's the motives? What's going on either in the business or with that person individually that we have to really start to understand at a deeper level if we're going to be very effective at helping them with their business, being great partners, building relationships and rapport that's going to last, that's going to build our business, and really being able to meet their needs at a level that maybe they didn't even know they were looking for. And so being that great at using questioning and listening skills is a real toolkit asset for us as salespeople. And so we want to spend some time really understanding how do we do that? How do we sort of crack that net? And how do we build through those layers so that they really feel that they can trust us and that we are another valued member of their team, and we want to have those consultative selling relationships with them where they see us as the consultant to go to, where we're the ones that can really help them, understand their situation, and be there to really provide the best solutions for them, the best products, whatever it is that you are providing them. They see you as that go-to person. And so the first thing I want to talk about is listening. And so, you know, I remember doing sales training many years ago and people saying, you know, well, if you're in sales, you're just someone who can really talk really well. You talk a lot, you're very extroverted. And in fact, we all know that really the best thing about salespeople who do a really fundamentally great job is that they're great listeners. So before we're able to actually connect and have those great relationships and share our products and services with our customers, we really need to have the skill sets of listening pretty honed so that we are listening for the right things, knowing how to listen. And I know that sounds funny, listening as a skill, but listening is really a skill. And it's one of the things as we go through coaching school. So as an executive coach, we do a lot of training just on how to listen. And so this is a very, you know, it's something that can be refined. It's something that the more you practice, the better you get at it. So let's talk about listening. There's different levels of listening. So level one, there's internal listening, and that's where really you're still listening to a lot of your own information, things that are going on. Level two is where we have that sharp focus on the other person. And level three is when we are picking up everything else that's going on in the world. And this is really where we want to be, between that level two and level three. That is our target as salespeople. We want to make sure that we are listening for the things they're not saying, that we are hearing for what else is going on in the environment, that we're picking up on a lot of the cues. So at level one, this is really where, if you think about those old comics that you have the bubbles of things up at the top, people are still really involved in their own business. You're in your own head, you're thinking about the things you have to do today. So you've asked a question, maybe you're listening, but you're also thinking about, oh, I've got to pick up my dry cleaning, or, oh, geez, I wonder what's on Netflix tonight, or, you know, oh, geez, I've got to, you know, get to another appointment. So there's a lot of other things that are going on in your brain. And what we want to do is really work at strategies to help us stop thinking about other things and really being able to focus in on our customers. When we are spending time with them, whether it's over the phone or on Zoom, or whether it's in person now as we start to open up a little bit more, how do we quiet those internal thoughts and get out of our own head so that we can move to that level two listening? And you can see in this picture, you know, we've got this intense focus on the other person. I'm no longer thinking about my own thoughts and my own feelings and things that are going on in my head, but I'm really trying to focus in on what they're saying, why they're saying it, picking up on cues, asking more questions, really understanding what they're saying or not saying, and being able to be laser focused on them versus on myself. And so a level two listener is someone who really can make the person that they're listening to feel like they're being heard. And so this is a great skill set. It's really about how we use our body language, how we lean in, what are we doing with our eyes? You know, are we doing a little bit of head nodding? Are we saying something like, you know, little things like that. Maybe we're taking notes, right? It really signals to the person who's talking that I'm interested, I'm really trying to understand, and I'm here, right? I'm really here with you in the moment. And so this is really where we want to be as a salesperson. Level three is even at that next deeper level. And, you know, sometimes when I talk to people about level three, this is maybe even, if you think about, if you've ever been in a counseling session or therapy session where there's a lot going on that maybe the person who's speaking isn't really sharing. So they might be saying, oh, yes, I'm fine, or things are great with the business, but really their body language is saying something completely different, right? Or you're picking up cues in their office that there's, you know, lots of clutter and it seems like really disorganized. And you're starting to pick up on things more than just their verbal, and you are really sort of understanding the feel of the room, the emotion in the room, and you're really picking up on that to say, so tell me a little bit more about how things are going, and, you know, tell me some of the challenges that you've had. When you think maybe there's more to what they're saying, a level three listener is really going to pick up on more than just the obvious. And that's what we're really trying to do as salespeople, be great listeners. So this skill of listening, really, you know, again, calming our inner thoughts and taking the time to just pause, take a deep breath and focus on the other person, pick up as many cues as possible so that you can have a really good chance with understanding and really getting through those layers to understand what's happening with this person and what their needs are. And so in sales, what are we really listening for? So the core issues that we're listening for are values. You know, what are some of the values that the company has? What's their mission statement? What are they trying to achieve? You know, what is it that's important to them? Their wants, you know, I'd really love to have a partner that could do this for me. What is that? What does that want? You know, if I could be the best partner for you, what does that look like for you? What are the issues they're dealing with? What are the requirements? You know, if you're selling in a product or a service, are there specific requirements that they need? As they start talking about their needs and the things that are going on, you can pick up on a lot of these things, and then you might want to go a little deeper, right? As you hear some of them, just for clarity, to make sure that you're hearing everything and, you know, making sure that you're taking the best notes possible and really fully understanding what it is that they're required to do. What are their pressures? What are their timelines? You know, do they have things that are happening? Is their boss or their manager putting pressure on them? Is there a sales target? You know, they've had a really tough time during the pandemic. How are they dealing or coping with that? And have the sales targets gone up over the past couple of months? And how are they dealing with those pressures? All of those things have been shifting, right? And I know with my customers, what was happening, you know, 6 months ago has really changed, even in the last couple of months, even in the last week. And so constantly asking to make sure that I'm on top of it, because as these things change, I want to make sure that I'm informed and that I'm being the best partner that I can be. And so asking some of those questions and making sure we're listening for cues as they say, oh, you know, I've really, you know, before the summer months, I've really got to hit those targets, or whatever that might be, or we're going to do layoffs in the fall if things don't pick up. Well, what does that mean? You know, what does that really mean for you and your business, and how can I help support that? What are some of the opportunities? Obviously, we're always listening for those, right, with our ear to the ground. What are the things they're not saying? What is the gap in what they're saying that maybe I can pick up on and move forward through that opportunity in a new way? And how does my product or service align? Obviously, we're always looking for those opportunities as we hear things to think about, okay, this is how I can really best support. But before we jump into supporting, we want to make sure that we do our due diligence with asking great questions and going a little deeper. So even if we picked up on some of these things in the initial conversation or in the initial 5 minutes, we want to make sure that we spend as much time fully understanding so that we don't jump to a solution or a resolution that we think is going to help them without fully understanding. And so we're going to talk about a couple of those things. So questioning tips and techniques. So we have some of them that I'm sure we've heard about before: open and closed questions, using open questions to get them talking, closed to get them sort of focused. Funnel questions, we'll talk a little bit more about that today, and probing questions. We don't necessarily use a lot of leading questions, although maybe if it's someone that you know needs to go a certain place and you've been working with them for a while and you do think this might be an area that we can focus on. And rhetorical questions, maybe not as much either. But I mean, those are just some different kinds of questions that can be used. But I think at the bottom line, what we're really saying is that what we want to do is ask, not tell. Before we stepped into that place of being that solution person or being the one that's going to provide the overview of what to do next or what we think might be a good option for you, we want to really make sure that we ask before we tell. And I think it's hard for some of us as salespeople, because recognizing we've gone in with our own agendas. We have our own sales targets we're trying to meet. We're trying to do a whole bunch of things at once. We're, you know, managing the flow of the conversation. We're trying to listen for those cues and those opportunities, right? We're also trying to jump in at the right time with our products and our solutions. We want to show credibility. We want to show value. And so one of the, you know, key takeaways from today's is what I want to tell you is that the more we listen and the better listeners that we are, the more credibility and rapport we can build. And so sometimes we think we build that from talking more, and sometimes we build it more from listening more. So ask, not tell. Even if you just write that for yourself as a little helpful hint as you go into your next call to see how that might help you, that can really slow you down sometimes to make sure that you have done your due diligence and really ask some great questions. And so questioning techniques or skill sets can really help us do a few things. One is really learn, so maybe we think we know everything that's happening in the industry, or maybe we think we know everything about this particular company or what's happening with our buyer. But what often happens is when we ask great questions, we understand better. We really learn more about what's happening in the industry, and we can connect the dots in a different way. So it's really powerful to take that time to understand and learn. And if they say something you don't understand, probe, ask for further detail, really, so that you have clarity as to how that's impacting them in their business and how you can support and where you might fit in. Of course, relationship building, great questions help us to really understand the person, understand their situation, and help us build those bridges, right? And really help build those things that we have in common. So we know that the more we understand about a person, the more of those bridges can be built. And so continuing to ask for more details and understanding the whole person can really help us build those relationships. Of course, managing and coaching, where we have situations where we can help or often offer support, really, again, understanding what's going on with them can really be helpful. Avoiding misunderstandings. One of the things sometimes we do as salespeople, because we want to be helpful, we have great solutions, we want to be the ones that come to the table and say, hey, I can really help you with that. That's kind of in our DNA as salespeople, which is great. But when we jump in too fast, we sometimes have those misunderstandings happen. And so again, maybe sometimes stepping back when you thought you were on the right track, but maybe you're not, pulling in some more questioning can really help you make sure that you are on the right track and avoid some further misunderstanding. And so being open for that, catching yourself where, somebody's coming back to you with a particular issue and it's not what you thought it was, stepping back and asking more questions is okay. Of course, diffusing a heated situation, many of us have been through negotiations where things, get really heated at times. And so stepping back again and asking questions, taking a deep breath and saying, okay, how do I come at this from a different way? How do I better understand so that I can step into this conversation without the emotion? How do I diffuse both either my emotion or their emotion by saying, okay, great, let me just step back and really take a moment to make sure I clearly understand what you're saying and why. And that can really help diffuse the situation. And then, of course, it helps us with persuasion and influencing people. And as salespeople, that is part of our skill set as well, being able to work with people, helping them get to the next level, helping them understand how what we have to offer from a features and benefits perspective is really going to help them, right? And so that persuasion and that level can also be really well facilitated by great questions and great listening techniques. So what do we need to know? Who our customers are, how they make decisions, who our customers' competitors are and suppliers are, what are their strategies and tactics, how do we influence and expand our account penetration? So these are things that are obviously going through our mind as we're asking great questions. Where do we need to support them? How do we win? How do we align ourselves with our messaging or our programs or our strategies? All of those things, are racing through our minds as salespeople. And we know that when we deliver customer growth, it can also help us enable our marketing teams, our finance teams, other people that are relying on us to build and plan around this customer to understand more. And so understanding what those strategies might be and how do I, have the right tools to really support you and really understand how I can further leverage some of those customer opportunities. So there is a lot going on as we're going through any customer relationship and any situation that we have where we're really trying to understand deeper. We have a lot of different things we're trying to do at once. And so that's why I think even taking more time up front in the beginning of our meetings to really discuss how things are going and going deeper than maybe we have in the past can really be helpful for us to understand at a deeper level. And so what we're really trying to understand is understanding our customers so that we can add that value, have that impact, and making sure that we're linking those things up very strategically. The worst thing that can happen is you can say, oh, I have this offering or this service that's really going to help meet that need, when they say, no, that's not really the need. You really didn't hit it right. You didn't hear me. You didn't see what that was, that I was really needing or asking for. So adding value is really, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do. And sometimes that's both by making a sale, and sometimes it's both by counseling and just being a great partner and knowing that those sales are going to come if I'm doing the right things by this person in this moment. And so how am I constantly adding value? And one of the things that, as I leave any client meeting, I always say to them or ask them, did I add value today? And if so, in which way? And that's really what I'm trying to always do, is ensure I'm adding value or impact in some way. And that can be different things at different times, right? So ask yourself, how am I really focused? Not just on making a sale, but am I really thinking about adding value to this very important customer, and how am I going to grow my relationship with them? So one of the techniques for questioning is the spin technique, and maybe some of you are familiar with this. And it was really the spin selling technique has been around for a long time, but still a really great way to use questioning and have different techniques of questioning that can really help. And this was a technique that was researched done on 35,000 sales professionals on how they really said this was a great strategy for them as they were trying to learn how to use questions as a strategic way to do better business selling. And so the first thing is really situation questions. Again, going in and trying to understand what's happening, facts, background, what's going on in your business, so I can have a better understanding. The next one is really exploring difficulties. So what are the problems that you're dealing with right now? What are some of those dissatisfaction or difficulties? What's at risk? What are the areas that I could maybe help in? And so really identifying, what are those challenges now or that you might foresee in the future to stop you from continuing to grow. So, really just probing in on those problems. Implication questions are those problems where we're exploring effects on consequences of the buyer. How will this challenge affect your future profitability, your bonus? What is it that your boss is looking for? And that can be very powerful to help them as they're thinking through, yes, this is very important. This is a priority, and this is why, because there's a huge implication here, maybe for myself personally, or maybe for the business overall. So what are those implications? And then the needs payoff questions is really to stimulate the client to describe the benefits that your solution could offer. Would it help if, right? So if I could do this, how would that help, right? And so that's really just that payoff, that needs payoff, for them to recognize that you might have a solution that actually could help them. And sometimes it's even things that they haven't thought of. And so that's wonderful. So one of those things might be customer service. What if, we can supply you with 24/7 customer service? Would that really help you in, getting through some of those needs that you have? And so whatever those things are, some of the solutions that you may have to share with them, it's amazing sometimes how the buyer will go, yeah, actually that is an awesome idea, and that can really help me. I never thought of that. So it's an extra benefit, right? So the spin use of questioning, this technique is really something that, especially new salespeople going in, can really help you spend that time in the questioning mode before we move too quickly to thinking we know what's really going on. And this strategy and this technique can really help you do your due diligence to not only understand what's going on with a particular buyer, but with the industry, with the customer, and what's happening right now from a priority perspective for this particular situation. So a great model for you to take with you in your toolkit. Secondly, I wanted to talk about funnel questions. And I don't know if you've ever used this before, but this is typically used by detectives when they're trying to really understand a situation. And this might be where something is a complex situation where either you're new to it, or maybe it's something that you haven't dealt with this customer on before, and you really want to understand. And so this technique really starts with general questions, and it really starts to drill down to more specifics. And I'm not suggesting we want to be drill sergeants with our clients, but what this technique does is it gets down to the specifics. So when you're really trying to understand, what does that budget look like, or what are the parameters around this situation, or how do I understand what kind of products and services are really working for them? How do I get to the nitty-gritty of the conversation? And this is really where you're trying to understand at a level that you can, again, be a great partner and really provide the right solution. Now, I've got a little example here, and this is not a sales example, but it really kind of hones it down for you. So it goes like this. So how many people were involved in the fight? About 10. Were they kids or adults? Mostly kids. What sorts of ages were they? About 14 or 15. Were any of them wearing anything distinctive? Yes, several of them had red baseball caps on. Can you remember if there was a logo on any of the caps? Now that I remember, now that you're thinking of it, yes, I remember there was the letter N. So this funnel question is about sort of starting up top. And sometimes, you know, it's just like when you ask that question, how are you today? People will say fine, right? But if you add more specifically, you know, how are you doing today versus last week? You know, are things better this week? You get a different kind of response, right? And so the more specific that you might be as you go down this sort of funnel question, you can get to some of those specifics around what do they really need? What are they looking for from a product's features and benefits? What is the price range they're really needing? What kind of service do they really need in order to be effective in their industry and what's going on with their business right now? So getting down to some of those nitty gritties, the funnel question technique can be one that can be helpful. Again, depending on the situation and the complexity of the situation. This is really something that might be helpful as things are getting more complicated with your conversation. The next one is probing questions. And so this is really, sometimes it's just making sure that you're asking for an understanding to understand, make sure that you really understand the full breadth of what it is that they're asking you for. And so it's something could just be like, when do you need this by, or being very specific with what exactly does that look like for you. But also one of the other techniques that you can use is the 5 whys. And again, this isn't about interrogating our customers. This is about really understanding at a deeper level what is going on with them and using questioning techniques to really help you be more successful as a salesperson. So if we have a certain problem, so our client may be refusing to pay for something, okay? So we ask the 5 whys. So why? So what happened? So the delivery date was late, so the leaflets couldn't be used, right? Why? The job took longer than expected. Well, how come? Why? We ran out of printer ink. Why? Ink was used in a large last-minute order that we didn't expect. And why? Well, we didn't have enough ink in stock, so we couldn't order new supplies in time. As you go through these different levels of why, you see clarity as to what the problem was, why that problem happened, you know, how they might have tried to fix it in the past and it wasn't successful, and what they really need moving forward. And so the 5 whys can also come in handy, again, sometimes with more complex issues, but really just to spend that time with your customer to really understand, and not in a way where they're feeling interrogated, but really where they understand that you're trying to understand at a deeper level and really get all of the detail that you can before you come back with some solutions. And so one of the things that I say to people, probably the best thing to do is to find your own best questions. So I can tell you what some of my favorite questions are, but I always go into a sales call with 10 questions in my pocket, literally on my piece of paper, on my presentation, somewhere where I can reference them quickly in the moment, because I want to make sure that I have those questions ready to go. And sometimes that's the hardest part, right? Preparing yourself for the questions. And so if you go in with your favorite or your top 10, some of mine are what else? You know, what else is a really easy way to go deeper on a particular area. So you've asked all the questions you can think of, and you're still not getting to that, you know, crux of detail that you really need to help them or really understand. What else is very powerful. And so when people hear that, then they say, oh, okay, yeah, I've got to add some more detail there. Let me add to what I just explained, and hopefully that will be helpful. And so other things like, tell me more, how does that sound to you? What do you think about? What hasn't been working for you today? What do you need most from me today? Those are things that really can help the buyer understand that you care, that you're there to listen, that you're really interested in what they have to say. Not about what you have to say, more so what they have to say. And so some of these questions, you know, whatever those best questions are for you, the more that you use them, the more comfortable you get with them. And I use the same questions almost all the time because it pulls out different things from the buyer at different points in my conversation, right? Really getting those check-ins. That's the other thing that I think is really important about questioning techniques, is having questions to check in. So how does that sound to you? you. So maybe I've shared something and I want to get a little bit of an indication whether it landed well, or maybe I need to go a little bit deeper on my solution so they understand it better. And then, really solutioning with them. What do you think about, like, if we did something like this? What if I brought in the product and you were able to test and sample it for a few weeks? Would that work for you? What do you think about, right? Different ideas and can stimulate them to expand further, and you can go deeper in both the understanding of what their needs are and also how your products and services can really be as helpful as possible. The last one, what you need most from me today, is probably one of the most empowering ones for the buyers, because it's really putting yourself out there to say, how can I support you today, right? What's going on in your world today that I can really help you with, right? And I know sometimes the buyer might say, I just want to listen. If you could just listen to me, I'm complaining today because things didn't go so well. Fine. Sometimes we need a little bit of that as well. But then let's move to, how do I support you from a business side? How do I quickly understand how those needs and things that maybe weren't going so well, how I can help solution around those things. Okay, so figure out what your best questions are, have them ready to go, have them somewhere that they're available to you in the middle of your conversation so that you can ensure that you are utilizing questions to help you throughout that sales call. So one of the favorite things that we all have to deal with is those objections that we have. And one of the ones around price we deal with a lot. And so, when we think about clarifying questions around the price objection, really thinking specifically about, how do I get to that agreement language? How do I both make them understand that I understand what they're saying, but I also need to move forward, and how do I reframe those things? And so the price objection, again, is something that is critical for us to move to our close, and really making sure that we are showing value at the same time, meeting the needs of our clients. And so clarifying questions around price can be things like, it might be too expensive compared to what? When you say the price range isn't the right one, compared to what? Tell me what you're comparing me to. How are you coming to the conclusion that this is too expensive? So tell me your thought process, because when you hear them relay it back to you, you can pick out specific things that they either might have got wrong, you can build on, because maybe it's a lack of clarity. Maybe there's some communication, further communication that I can add to help them understand that it really isn't that expensive, or, here's something additive that you didn't realize that we're going to give you as well. How much will it cost you to do nothing? So this is a little bit of an urgency, right? So you said you had this issue. This is something that can really help you. And how long are you going to wait to do something about that? There's also a cost for that. What is worth paying more for? So what that you see that I'm giving to you that isn't maybe showing value, and what would you be willing to pay more for, right? So understanding, again, that gets really into the needs and the psyche of the buyer, of the things that are really, really important. Is there something missing from my offer that might make it more valuable for you? Is there something I can add? Is there something that you were looking for that I didn't bring today? All of those kinds of questions, again, show you care, show that you're trying to understand. They're clarifying questions and helping us meet each other so that we can move forward in a new way. And what's the lift that you're looking to see, right? And so if we have a little indication of that ROI, so if you spend X and you're going to get Y, and I'm helping you with that lift, then isn't that worthwhile? Isn't there an ROI to that assumption? So really getting a handle around what is that profitability statement that they're really looking to make. So clarifying questions can help us, especially through those times when we are really dealing with those objections, price objections in particular, that are really stopping us from making the sale. So having these clarifying questions ready to go, again, can really be helpful for us. And as we get better at using questioning techniques, it can really help us be more strategic salespeople overall, because we're really listening well, we're asking great questions, we're probing in where we need to, and then we're able to balance that with the right solutions, the right options for them, the right features and benefits, and really be talking to those benefits that really meet their needs in a different way, right? So that strategic selling approach versus just being the one and done, and really making sure that we understand how we're building this relationship at a greater level. Okay, so I'm just going to shift a little bit to thinking about, how do I come and show up and be present in the moment in a sales call. So really wanting to make sure that, we have a million things going on, right? We've had customers on our phone. We've been dealing with service issues. We've, just had a meeting with my marketing team. There's all kinds of things going on in our minds. And when we think about really being present or focused, right? Is your mind full of a lot of things like in this picture, or is it more like the dog where I'm open, I'm ready, I'm focused, I want to be focused on you? And this is really doing some strategies and techniques to remind yourself that your mindset as a salesperson is probably the most beneficial thing that you can do for yourself walking into a sales call. Keeping yourself positive, keeping yourself focused, understanding that you want to have complete and utter focus on this particular customer in this moment so that I can ask great questions, I can listen deeply, I can really understand how to meet their needs. And people know that, right? People can tell when you're distracted. They can tell when you have a million other things going on. And so for us to really be able to put our phone aside, or before we step into that customer meeting, taking 5 minutes to just clear your mind, take a couple of deep breaths, whatever that is for you, to make sure that you let go of what you were doing and move to the new thing that you're going to be doing, and making sure that you're taking that concentrated time to think about your mindset. And am I going in with a positive feeling? Am I feeling this is going to be a great call? How do I make sure that my mindset is really helping me be successful? So I love this about staying focused. This dog is very focused, and you just know that they're wanting to jump on that hamburger as fast as they can, but they're not, right? They're listening and they're really taking their time. And sometimes this visual helps me. So when I'm in the moment and I'm wanting to jump in and talk about a solution, and I know I really haven't spent the time that I need to fully understand what's happening, I think about this dog and how this intense focus on making sure that I have done my due diligence before I jump in can really be helpful for all of us, right? So whatever strategy you might have, it might be a picture you carry with you or something that reminds you to stay in the moment, stay focused, ask great questions, and move when it is, when you've done your due diligence and you've got enough information. So staying focused during a sales call really means being prepared. So being prepared ahead of time, making sure you've done your research, you've got your questions ready to go. If there was something you were supposed to bring from the prior meeting, taking great notes, all of those things. Preparation for the meeting is so important. Maybe you go back on and do some research on the company, update yourself on your CRM notes. What else do I have in my database that I need to know and remember about this customer? All of those things, inclusive of anything personal that you might already know about them. How's your son doing, or how was your vacation last month? Whatever those things might be. Preparation is key because it really does help us stay focused. Managing the flow of the conversation. So really making sure that you are on top of the agenda. Managing, how much time you're spending before we move to the next things. If there's too much time being spent on one topic, how do I move to that next topic? That's keeping yourself focused both on the customer and the needs and the things that they're saying, as well as your own agenda of moving this forward and really trying to make sure I get to all of the points today. Excuse me. Ensure your objectives are being hit. And so this is that balance of listening and really trying to make sure that we're in the moment, and also being able to provide solutions and hit our objectives as well. Sometimes our objective is coming out of this call with just having great notes and understanding deeper, and then coming back next time with the solution, or saying to them, you know what, I'm going to go away. I learned a lot today. I really understand that your needs are X, Y, and Z, and so I want to come back with a great proposal. How about we book time next week, right? So we want to make sure that our objective of always moving to a next call or having a next step with this particular customer is what we always want to do, no matter what it is. Wanting to make sure that gets hit, right? So wanting to stay focused on how am I going to move them to this close where I'm sure that I have a next interaction with them in some way. Constantly measuring the room, and this is picking up on those emotions. And we talked a little bit about this as we were talking about that level 3 listening, really getting into those sound waves or radio waves or seeing things that aren't there, measuring the emotion in the room, picking up on those things, constantly measuring that. Because if there's something that comes up that you didn't pick up on, that could potentially stop you from having the sale, because maybe there's something more going on that you missed, right? So measuring the room, picking up on those cues is really important. Evaluate with questioning techniques. So using those questioning techniques to do those touch points. How does that sound to you? Is this meeting your needs? Am I hitting the mark with you today? Is this making sense for you? Those check-in questions before you get too far down the cycle in your call, to make sure that before you try to close, you really have hit those underlying causes and needs that we saw at the beginning, that is sort of underlying, that we don't always see right out of the gate. How do we get to those and make sure that we're checking in, that we've done a good job of that? Be a personality chameleon. We know this as salespeople, you know, the 4 different personality styles, whether you're expressive, amiable, analytical, or whether you're a driver. Our personality styles really does impact how we come across, how quickly we talk, how much facts we bring, how expressive we are. All of those things go into the kind of personality that we show up with. And getting to know the personality of our buyer and really being able to meet them where they're at. So if they're analytical, you know, we come with enough analytics for them to be able to make a decision, right? If they're a driver, we're moving quickly, like we're moving to, you know, the pace of what they need, right? So being that personality chameleon to meet them where they're at this particular moment and what's happening with them personally or with the business as well. So shifting your personality as needed and really getting better at being that chameleon as required. Be flexible and open-minded, and this comes back for me about really being in the moment and being present. If we come in with too much of our own agenda on, you know, being a little bit too focused on exactly what we think we're going to do today versus coming in with really just the mindset of being open and flexible, and let me really be in the moment, listening to my customer, what's happening with them today, might mean I have to shift my agenda. The objective of coming away with the next step doesn't go away, or maybe making a sale doesn't go away, but what I'm selling today might be very different than what I thought. So based on being open and listening and really understanding what's going on right now, I have to be flexible and open-minded to some new things, right? And again, sometimes we don't have that in the moment with us. We might have to go away and think about what the best strategy might be, but then come back with the best solution for the client. So having that flexibility, keeping yourself open-minded can really be a great strategy to ensuring you're hearing all the key things that are going to help you. And ensure you're adding value. So the value proposition is always, you know, when I interact with anyone, I want them to think there was value in that time we spent together, just like today. You're spending some time with me today talking about questioning and listening to uncover those needs. I'm really hoping that you're taking away some value today. So what is the impact that I'm making? Want to make sure that I'm hitting the mark. Am I getting to the things that you might have some questions around? And ensuring that I'm both providing you with some solutions, but also identifying with those needs and making a good correlation ongoing. Okay, so wanting to really remove those distractions. So one of the things, you know, I think, you know, we talked a little bit about, as we talked about staying focused in the moment during the sales call, is really ensuring that you're taking away any distractions that you have. So is it your phone? You know, what other distractions do you have? Do you have your computer up and you're working through a presentation and there's pings going up on your computer? You want to make sure that all of those things are shut off. So again, it's this preparation ahead of time that can really help us be very successful. And what we're really trying to show to our customer and our buyer is really that you are the center of attention. You are the most important thing right now for me to really understand how I can meet your needs and best show value and impact. And so think about what are those things that will distract you during the call, right? Make sure that you have only the things that are necessary for you in front of you. Maybe that's pamphlets that you have, or maybe it's those top 10 questions you bring with you, but not having other customer files around, or having people pinging up on email, or having your phone go off. Those are things that we can really control going in as much as possible, and that can really help us be very focused in the moment and getting the best out of our customers. Okay, so that about wraps it up as far as some new things to think about, some new strategies, and really, you know, just hoping that what you took away today was being a great listener is probably one of the biggest skill sets that you can have as a salesperson that's really going to help you. And thinking about before you go into your next sales call or client meeting, to really think about, how do I minimize those distractions? How do I stay in the moment? How do I get rid of my internal dialogue that's still going off in my head? How do I quiet that to be sure that I am focused on this particular customer, that I am really focusing in on their needs, asking great strategic questions, and getting down to the nitty-gritty so that I really fully understand what's going on. Okay, so that kind of wraps it up for me on this particular topic. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the CPSA and how you can earn your designation. So for those of you that haven't earned a designation, they can be very powerful for you as you're thinking about how you bring that credibility and how you bring that value. So there's the Certified Sales Associate, which is the first level. There's the Certified Sales Professional, which is the second level. And then there's also the Certified Sales Leader. So there's different roads you can go depending on your work experience. There's some coursework that you have to take, and of course there's testing that you go through to get your designation. And if you have further questions about that, you can obviously get in touch to the Institute at CPSA. And so I'm just going to ask Rupalin to come on in and talk about the upcoming public webinar.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Before we get to any questions, I will chat about our next upcoming public webinar. So we do have one hosted in partnership with our accredited partner, Teneo Results, on July 16th. And this one is called Inside, Outside, Upside Down, the Impact of the New Economy on Selling and What to Do About It. So to access this free public webinar, as well as the other ones that we have on the board, please go over to cpsa.com/calendar, and you'll see all of our webinars, our workshops, and our virtual training up on there to register. Thanks so much, Nancy.
Yeah, no problem. And any questions? I'm happy to take them.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Nancy. We have one here from Rick, and the question is, something we worry about is that we might come off a little bit too aggressive by asking too many questions. Do you have any tips on that?
Love it. Yes, absolutely. And that's where you're really reading the room, right? And that's that temperature check to make sure that you're asking questions in a way where the buyer understands that you're really trying to understand deeply, and you're really trying to assess a need, right? And so we're not asking questions for question's sake. We're asking questions in a way that it helps us ask better questions. So the next question that I ask is going to be probably related to something that they just said. And when we do that, it shows that we've been listening, and it shows the buyer, oh, they really care. Oh, they're asking further about how those policies and procedures might impact moving forward together. They're asking about, you know, understanding that deeper so that they really understand my customer service policy so that they're able to meet it in a really professional way. So I think it's not about, you know, asking questions where they feel that they're being grilled. And you can even say at some point, you know, I really just want to ask a lot of questions to make sure that I'm really clear on what it is your needs are, how I can best support you, all of those kinds of things. And that really helps the buyer understand, okay, yeah, I'm going to give them the information so that they can best support me moving forward. So sometimes it's even just letting them know that, you know, I really came in today, I really want to make sure that I'm adding value, and I want to be, you know, the best strategic partner. So I really just need to make sure I understand fully before we move forward. So I hope that helps. And certainly, you know, we'd never want them to feel like you are questioning them in a way that is negative, right? It's all about a positive.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to enter them in the questions function of your GoToWebinar dashboard. We do have a couple of others here. So question for Nancy, what have you found to be more effective, phone call or video call?
Well, I think they're both effective in their own right. I think on a phone call, you're actually listening deeper for tone of voice. You know, sometimes people will sigh, and you hear a lot of those cues on a phone call that sometimes we miss when we're looking at someone, you know, face to face, whether it's a video call or in person, because we're so distracted by all the body movements and things, maybe things in the back or, you know, something they're wearing, and those things can distract us sometimes. So sometimes a phone call, you actually do pick up on cues. But having said that, a video call, again, you're picking up on a lot more what they're their eyes are saying. They might be saying everything's fine, but they really look like they're upset, or they're frustrated today. And so you can pick up on a lot of those other cues that can help you step into the relationship to say, geez, is everything going great? Like, what's happening with you this week, right? And so it's that feeling that you really care about them that can really be picked up on a video call. So I think every call, video, in person, on the phone, they're all great in their own right. And I think as salespeople, we're picking up on cues no matter what we're doing. So I don't think it's a right or wrong. I think either one can be effective.
Thanks so much, Nancy. And we do have a couple of people asking if this session will be recorded and sent out to all of our participants. Yes, it has been recorded and will be sent out to each one of our attendees after this session for sure. We do have some time for some additional questions, but Nancy, you did answer the ones that were submitted. So maybe we'll just give it a minute or two if that's
Sure.
okay.
Yeah, of
Thank you
course.
so much. And you'll find the question area in your dashboard. Just feel free to put any questions you have on the content in there. If not, Nancy has kindly provided her contact information on this slide, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
Well, here's a good
anytime.
one, Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got, what is the best approach for cold calls?
Yes, cold calls can be definitely harder. The first thing I'll say about cold calls is I hope sometimes, whatever we can do to make it a warm call. So if you're able to connect with someone else, a referral, or somehow find someone in the company, it always makes it a bit easier. But with pure cold calling, if you're doing pure cold calling and that's part of your role, I think one of the things that you have to be really careful of is setting up the call where the potential buyer understands what it is you're trying to achieve, and so they don't feel like this is you're being overly invasive with asking questions with someone who you really don't know much about, right? And so I think it's how you set it up, and I think it's how you say, you know what, I got your connection, or I got your contact, and I'm really just trying to understand if we could do some business together. And so would you mind if I ask you some questions about what's happening in your business today, or how I may be able to meet your needs? So I think it's how you step into that questioning that can really help set yourself up for success going into really understanding what's going on with them. And I know myself too, cold calling, sometimes you just hit people at the wrong time. And so, that can also be, is this a bad time for you? Is there a better time where we can connect? So really just making sure that you are being empathetic to the situation of the person, asking those questions sort of at the beginning. But I think it's really about how you set the call up in a way that the potential buyer on the other end understands your motives. And so then they'll be more open to either answering your questions or maybe giving you a better time that you guys could potentially work together.
Thank you so much, Nancy. No new questions here. So maybe we'll give everyone back about 5 minutes of their time. But on behalf of the CPSA, Nancy, I really just wanted to thank you for this fantastic webinar today and for your time in presenting today. And for everyone who attended, thank you so much for attending today's workshop. And please feel free to go over to our calendar at cpsa.com/calendar for any of our upcoming sessions. But thank you so much, Nancy, again.
Great. Thanks so much, and have a great week, everybody.
You too. Have a great week, everyone.
Take care.
Bye now.
Bye.